Hey everyone, and welcome to the channel. Today I will be talking about The Engineer, Book 2 of the Last Horizon series by Will Wight. The first book in that series was The Captain, that came out sometime in the middle of last year, and I did a review for that as well. I thought that book was pretty good. I gave it 3 stars. I liked it. I didn't think it was anything really special, but I think The Engineer, the second book, is a pretty big step up. I gave this one a 4-star ranking, and I think just overall it improves in all of the aspects that I didn't like about the first one. In general, this is just kind of a very fun, lighthearted sci fantasy story, which is always a fun mix when you get those fantasy elements and the science fiction elements combined into one. And this one does it in a really fun way where basically our main character, Varric, is just a super powerful archmage, but also there is like galaxy level starships and just all these kinds of things going in and out of dimensions. So in general, it's a really fun read. This series seems to be more in the vein of, I even hesitate to say this, but a Bobbyverse, a Project Hail Mary, because even those are a little bit more serious with the science than this one is. This one is definitely very scaled back on any hard science, and the fantasy elements really do feel like they get pushed more to the forefront than those other books I mentioned, but I compare it to those because of the fun, lighthearted nature and just some of the banter that goes on between the characters and everything in here. But with all that being said, let me tell you what The Engineer is about. So from the events of the first book, The Last Horizon, the ship we are on has been damaged and they need to get the next member of their crew. That's really what the first book was completely, was, you know, gathering crew members, and we kind of pick up that journey here when we are trying to get, big surprise, the engineer for this ship. And unfortunately, the person they want to be the engineer has been captured by the Advocates, which is some kind of goody two-shoes galactic agency with their leader Starhammer. And they need to break out the engineer so she can come and unlock more capabilities of the Zenith starship, The Last Horizon. And that's kind of where everything gets unraveled. And, there are definitely issues with going up against the Advocates because they have somebody incredibly powerful on their side, Starhammer. And Starhammer is what I think a good villain for this series is. So that's the general layout of this book. Now let me go ahead and tell you what I think is good about this book, why you might like it, some things that if these sound good to you, you are going to want to read it. And I kind of already started with Starhammer. I think that the first book had an okay villain. It felt very hollow and empty to me. The first villain was the Robot King. I can't remember his actual name, but he's basically just a bunch of robots, hive mind kind of thing going on here. And I found Starhammer to be a much better antagonist in this story. He does have a trope that may or may not work for you, but he has kind of like in Doomsday from Superman, where if you defeat him one way, he's not going to get defeated the same way again. He has this engine inside of him that when he dies or is defeated, it activates and it basically exponentially makes him stronger again, which I found to be interesting. I think in a series like this, it really works. I could see how in maybe a more serious, straightforward series that wouldn't work as well, but for me, Starhammer was the kind of foil that this crew needed, because everybody a part of our crew is already super, super powerful, and having, a lower level person where they're not really a threat, I think would be lacking in the series. So the fact that Starhammer was here, he was great, and the fights that they have and just everything about Starhammer I really found to be a huge improvement compared to the first book. Another thing I think this book did much better than the first book is it really made all of the characters feel more unique. A big problem, and maybe part of the problem, was the structure the first book had. We are collecting crew members so quickly, one after another, that I never really felt like they were all that unique outside of their basic abilities. I didn't really feel like any of them had their own unique voice. And in this book, I really think that got to shine a little bit more. We got to learn and understand how our characters feel and some of their motivations for joining the starship and just all those little things. I did enjoy some of the banter between some of the characters. I think it just kind of helped make this feel more like a group that is coming together than just, a bunch of people thrown into a starship saying, hey, we need you to do this. And that was one of the biggest problems I did have with the first book, that I couldn't remember who anybody was, why they were there, what they needed, what they wanted. They all just kind of felt like they were written completely the same, with the same voice and the same tone. And this time around, I really think they started to shine on an individual front even more. I did especially like the relationship that is starting to form between Varric and the engineer that they get, Mel. I think that is a nice element that can help this series move forward and just kind of help us see the ramifications of Varric having lived 7 lives before this and just kind of being more, I don't want to say omnipresent, but more all-knowing than anybody else is, and how weird that would be to interact with somebody who knew you from a different life, completely different, completely separate, so they know everything about you and you know nothing about them. I think that getting explored through those two characters more than the other ones will be a nice touch as the series goes forward, and I think it was really well done in this book itself. And the last real positive I think that this book had going for it was the world expanded a little bit, and we got some more of the Zenith material or objects coming to the forefront, which I really think was well done. I think it's obviously been hinted at that there are several of these objects. They're super powerful, and how they're all going to interact together, and it almost seems like there's maybe a rivalry between the objects themselves, which is kind of interesting. I like how that you have these alive starships, mechanical beings, like a super advanced AI. I think it adds a nice little touch, and just especially the sarcasm and just this weird, I don't know, it makes you question the Last Horizon, the ship itself, what it wants, what it's doing, its real motivations and goals, but just some of the back and forth it has with the characters in general is a huge positive. So getting more of those Zenith devices coming into it and seeing their own personalities and how they're all going to interact with each other, and I have hopes for how this is going to build out the universe even more. And here are some things that maybe will turn you off from this book, this series in general, and this isn't really a true negative, but if you are looking for something, especially in your sci-fi, that is much more thematic, that is asking a lot of deep, intricate questions that really make you think and question the universe, your place in it, life, the exploration of humanity, and all those kinds of things, this is not the series for you. This is a much more surface level, dessert kind of book than, something that really makes you think of what is out in the universe, what could happen. This is not that kind of book. This is very much a fun, like, let's have a good time, more of the popcorny action movie that is good than anything, deep and, Oscar worthy, if that makes sense. So not everybody cares. Not everybody wants those really difficult reads. So this is kind of one of those ones where I always mention it, what type of book this is, maybe the kind of mood and it sets and what kind of mood you need to be in to enjoy it. So that's kind of my overall thoughts for this one. My next kind of issue with it, and maybe I'd be curious on if anybody else had the same issue, and I had the same issue with the first book even more, is that sometimes the way the chapters they jump right into like the next thing. I feel like there were plenty of times where we're like walking along and then I stumble and I have to like catch up to understand who we're talking to, what we're talking about, and who's involved in the scene. I don't know if that's just a me thing, and maybe I'm just not, I don't know, that transition is just startles me. And I don't know if I've ever really had another book do that to me this way. I don't know. There were multiple times where I would be listening to this on audio and be like, did I miss something? What is going on? How did we get here? And I would rewind and listen to the same thing again and be like, so I didn't miss anything. We just kind of jumped. We just kind of fell into this new place, which, once again, that might be a me thing. Like, it bothers me more, affects me more than it will you. But that is just something I wanted to point out because it was just such a weird reading experience when that happened. One last thing that I will mention that you might not like, especially if you are a big like journey person, all of our characters are starting up at the top. We are following characters who are at the top of their game. They're not on a journey to get to the top. They're already there. They are the pinnacle of whatever, they're fitting into, whether it be fighting, technology, leadership, all of these things. These are like the pinnacle best of the best. And I could see wanting to kind of watch their story. I know some people don't like coming in at what could basically be like the most overpowered version of somebody. I don't know how a lot of these characters are going to grow on a power level. I think there will be a lot of like character growth and like how they will interact together as a team and characters. But as far as like new magic, new powers, that kind of thing, for the main crew, I don't really see that happening. And so I'm interested in what people think because, part of me loves to see that journey, that progression. It's all the time in anime where you start at you're a genin and you got to work up to be a Hokage. I don't know how that's going to happen in the series, and I don't think it is. I think we are starting at like the top tier level, and I could see that bothering some people. Now, I do think that this series is much more about exploration, and these characters are going to really be what this series is about, more so than that progression fantasy. But I know most people coming to a Will Wight book are used to Cradle, and I haven't read Cradle yet, but I do know that it is a progression RPG, y kind of book, where in the first book they're basically nothing, they're very weak, and they've got to power up and become more. I'll read Cradle at some point, but that is my general understanding of that series. And so if you are coming to this book as a Will Wight fan expecting more of that, I think you're going to be severely disappointed, because I don't think that is the kind of journey he's going for with this. I think this is going to be a much more character-driven exploration kind of story than anything with power scaling. Now, I could be wrong. For all I know, as we get more Zenith devices and all of these things, that our characters are going to become ever more powerful. But to me, if anything, the ships themselves might get more powerful, but our characters are going to kind of stay at that same level, and it's going to be about those inner character connections and how they get along and how they interact, and betrayal, love, trust, all those kinds of things are really what this series is going to be about. But that is kind of my general feeling for The Engineer. I really enjoyed my time with it. I did finish this in early December, so I'm a little bit behind getting this review out because I did a lot of end of the year content. So I don't know where this ended in my 2023 reading year. Obviously, this won't be on any 2024 list, even though this video is coming out then. But if you have read this series or are thinking about it, let me know your thoughts down below in the comments. And as always, have a good one.